Is AI coming for all of our jobs? And do we really need to be worried about it? Hello and welcome. Oh God. Welcome to Just Jordan Things, where today we're going to be talking all about the world of AI and what it means for our future and if we're really in danger. To start the conversation about AI, we have to talk about the past, present, and future of how it has shown up in our culture. And we also have to contextualize it within the framework of critical thinking. Artificial intelligence is not a new concept, but traditionally in media, we've seen this as a negative. There are very few representations in movies, art, culture of robots that are working with us. It's usually positioned as the enemy. Think of examples like Terminator, The Matrix, even WALL-E has kind of a negative perception of how technology shows up in our lives as humans. As we look at the scope of technology and how we've gotten into this instant gratification world where we have tech devices on us at all times and we rely on them for our daily lives. Are they really the problem? Or is this a result of the lack of critical thinking in our society now? The decline of critical thinking across the last few centuries has been astonishing. And it all comes to supply and demand in terms of AI. Critical thinking used to be something that we needed to survive in our society. If we go all the way back to cavemen, they had to use critical thinking skills for survival. Humans traditionally have had to rely on their ability to think critically to live. And we've slowly been losing aspects of that dependency over time. But the demand for critical thinking is always there because that's what progresses us as a society. People don't want to invest in the difficult skill of critical thinking because it's not necessary for our everyday lives to survive. We can go to the grocery store and pick up food. We don't have to worry about learning how to turn the crops and make sure that our harvest is ready and planned out for the next season. Somebody will do that for us. I don't have to worry about what it's going to be like if I get sick. Things that were once small and trivial are now devastating if we experience them. And things that were once devastating if we encountered them are now small and trivial. And of course, this is a broad generalization of how we live life in the United States, because of course there are still people around the world that don't have access to clean water, a food supply, housing, modern medicine. But for the sake of this conversation, and if you're watching this video, you're probably living in a world where you don't have to experience those challenges on a daily basis. As a society, we are slowly losing interest in the development of our critical thinking. And that's apparent by some of the examples of how we're no longer planning in long term. We don't think, I can guarantee that there are some of you watching this right now that know that the holidays are right around the corner, but you have no idea what you're going to do for them yet, even though they happen every single year, and they're not that far away in the grand scheme of things. We have stopped planning for the long term. We see this a lot with the younger generations and their perception around retirement. Either they're not planning for retirement because they don't know how to, they don't see it as important, or they see it as unattainable. We also see an example of this lack of critical thinking or the ability to think in these long-term schemes when we talk about things like the pyramids. In ancient times when they were building the pyramids, the people developing those plans and thinking of the concept sometimes knew that they were not even going to get finished in their lifetime. And yet they started them anyway. But in our day and age, we live in a world and timeline where we can't even conceive how the pyramids were made, and we think of conspiracy theories of how aliens had to help because there's no way that humans in their mind could conceptualize how this could happen. And we see this trend with a lot of conspiracy theories in today's society. Now, humans have always needed this resolute type of thinking. It's hard for us to grasp the concept of ambiguity. If we think of things like space, we have to have solutions for the never-ending possibility. We cannot conceive what a never-ending space dimension is. That's why answers that are reassuring, like conspiracy theories or religion, help us live our lives at a little bit more ease. Something that humans often forget because it's not put in front of us on a daily basis is we live in the privilege of all that have died before us, whether they died for freedom, for research, for education, for equal rights, for justice, for peace. We are living in the aftermath of that sacrifice. But that's not something that we're aware of unless we're actively seeking out history and the examples of how life as we know it came to be. Now, thinking about the present day, how often do you actively seek out practicing critical thinking? And how often do you rely on technology to substitute your ability to critical think instead? We are continuously looking for ways to make things easier as a society. My personal belief is everything comes back to two things. Humans are lazy and humans are selfish. And this is not necessarily a bad trait, but it's something we need to be aware of, because on a physiological level, our brains only have so much capacity, and they are constantly looking to reserve that energy because spending it could lead to not surviving. I know a lot of us have heard in business, we hear the common trope of find the laziest person and have them come up with a solution because they're going to find the most efficient way to do it. Because that's what our brains are wired to do. We're wired to like the ease and access of technology in our lives. But is it actually helping us progress as a society? There is no wrong or right answer, and that's the difficult part. The success in this image is just surviving and reproducing. A lot of times humans definitely get caught up in the picture of what surviving looks like and what the right way is to survive. But the truth of the matter is, when we get down to the grand roots of things, there is no right way to live. And that's really hard for some people to conceptualize. It might be obvious to say that being happy is the right way to live for a lot of people. And we strive for that happiness. We strive for that purpose. But at the end of the day, does it really matter? These are the questions that you need to ask for yourself. They're not for me to answer for you. They're just for me to present as information. But when it comes to terms of supply and demand of critical thinking, the demand is there, but our supply is diminishing rapidly. If you think we're smarter than we were 100 years ago, think of your individual ability to create a recipe from scratch, to know how to build a balanced meal, to be able to manage your own time. There's a lot of things that we've advanced on and a lot of things that we've left behind that we thought were no longer important. And unfortunately, it feels like critical thinking is one of those things that we've kind of left in the dust. Again, because we have to actively seek out how to practice critical thinking, and it's not ingrained in our daily routines of survival anymore. Now let's talk about the future, because what happens if we keep going the way things are happening now? The demand is always going to be there, but the supply is going to continue to diminish. And we've all seen that scene in WALL-E where everyone's just hooked up to a computer floating around in chairs. Is that successful survival? Is that what we want? We have to ask ourselves these questions and then be able to put forth the actions for what we actually want. Because right now it doesn't feel like we're putting forth the action for what we say we fear. Discipline is also something really hard for humans to learn to do and implement into our daily lives. It's also hard to contextualize that we are just another pinpoint in the privilege we're building for future generations. Again, going back to how selfish humans can be intrinsically, we think of ourselves as the center of the universe and everything is through our perspective. Things like emotional intelligence and critical thinking help reveal a little bit of that wider perspective, but in the grand scheme of things, we're never actually going to be able to see the full perspective. Let's use another example. Here's how smart the smartest person who has ever existed is. Here's the amount of available information that has ever existed. There's no possible way one human is ever going to be able to know everything that there is to know. And then if you add a layer on top of that, all of the knowledge that we have as humans is processed through the perception of other humans, which means there's an intrinsic bias to it and the perspective of being a human and not really rooted in the reality of what it is, which I realize is a little... There's a common phrase that I like to remind myself of a lot, where it is the smartest person will realize how dumb they really are. And the dumbest person will think about how smart they really are. The ceiling is not achievable for any of us. In fact, the ceiling does not exist. And yet we all strive to find a place we feel comfortable that's close enough to the top. How AI is going to show up in our future is widely dependent on how we value and implement critical thinking into our daily lives. Is it something you want to invest in? Is it something you are truly willing to discipline yourself in learning? Or are we going to fall for AI cat videos on Facebook thinking that they're real? Or wild and crazy conspiracy theories? It's really easy to go about this world and think about black and white, right and wrong, yes or no. But the hard truth of the matter is there is no right and wrong, or yes and no, or black and white. Everything we do is in this gray area, but we're constantly seeking out a place where we can find a resolute. So is AI the problem or are we the problem? Should AI take our jobs? What does that mean for society? These are all valid questions that don't have an answer, and we are watching unfold before us. We're determining the privilege that the future generations are going to live under. So if you're afraid of AI taking your job, there are things you can do right now to make sure that you aren't left without a career. Because I know that is a very scary reality for a lot of people right now. And not having a job is not an option for a lot of people because we rely on money to survive in our society. Find a way to start building critical thinking into your daily practices. It can be as simple as doing the Wordle on a daily basis, doing a crossword puzzle once a week, finding a fiction book, finding a nonfiction book. Wait, I don't remember which one is the boring one. Working on your emotional intelligence. Being devoted to continuous improvement in your daily life, and being okay with not having the instant gratification of the work that you're putting in. If you're worried about the specific career that you're in, start learning a new skill for a career that is future-proof. This could be a formal education, this could be a certification, this could just be something you start exploring. But stop making excuses to not do it because of your fear. Start thinking about long-term goals versus just what's happening right now. Maybe this training program is not going to be done for 5 years. That's okay because you're still starting to put the work in now. Maybe that investment portfolio you've been putting off putting money into because you don't have that much to contribute and you're too XYZ to do it. What is your plan for future-proofing yourself? Critical thinking is a muscle that you have to continuously work on, otherwise it fatigues. If you like this deep dive discussion and you want to talk about more things like this, leave me a comment below on another topic. And let me know the answer. Is AI going to take your job someday? I'm Jordan, and I'll see you next time.